Hello. In today's lesson, we're still going to continue in 4.4, but the plan for today is to really talking about using your graphing calculator. So this is a powerful tool, and we want to make sure we can take full advantage of this. So, in your previous homework, you were asked to graph things such as y equals -2 sine x minus pi over 4 plus 1. And to do this, we set up a transformation . We have dx plus h, and we have ay plus k. And we use the key points for a sine graph. And performed the transformation on each one of these key points, and then graphed it, right? Again, I am just kind of chugging through up here. And then we plot these things, right? Wouldn't it be nice if I could check this to make sure that I had done everything correctly? Well, that's what we're going to do today. So we're going to learn how to use our graphing calculator so that if we're asked to graph something like this, we can check our answers to make sure that both the graph that we're drawing is correct and the points that we generated using our transformation are correct. So, what we're going to do is we're going to pull up our graphing calculator. And the first thing that I'm going to want to do is check my mode. So you notice the previous, or this example problem that we did, the units, or the measure of the angle that we're using is radians. How did I know we're talking about radians? Because if I look at my x values, I see pi's in there. You might also see, the directions might also indicate that you should be in radian mode. So the first thing I want to do is check my calculator and make sure that it's in radian mode. So I'll press the mode button, and notice that right here we have two options. We have radian and degree. We should be in radian mode, so you notice the radian mode is highlighted. If, for instance, your calculator had been in degree mode, degree would be highlighted. To change it, you just move to the non-highlighted part and press enter, and it'll change the option. So now that I've made sure my calculator is in radian mode, I'm going to press second mode and get out of there. And I'm going to start by, and to enter this equation then into my calculator, what I need to do is press the y equals menu. And the first thing I'm going to do is clear out any equations that happen to be in there. So I'll press the clear button, and I can scroll up and down to get to each line. If I see something in there, I'll just press clear to get rid of it. And I'm going to scroll all the way down to the bottom to make sure that there's nothing down there in any of those Y slots at the very bottom. Okay? Now that I've made sure that all the Y equals spots are blank, I'm going to go and type in the equation that's written down. So I'm going to type in Y equals -2 sine x minus I over 4 plus 1. So notice to type this out. The sign button is right here. The variable button for the x is right here. To get the pi, I press second, and this caret up button right here. And rather than writing, their calculator doesn't have like a fraction specific button, so you just use the division bar. To do pi over 4 is just going to be pi divided by 4. Okay? And let's just hit graph and see what happens. Okay, I have an error. It says window range. So if I get a window range error, the place I need to do is look at my viewing window. In fact, it tells me check values in window. For example, the x max might be less than x min. What does that mean? Well, a maximum can't be smaller than a minimum. By definition, the maximum has to be a bigger value. So let's go look at our window and see if there's anything going on there. So I'll press the window button, and x min is -1, x max is +1. Well, that's fine. Y min is 4, Y max is 4. That's a problem, because the Y min isn't smaller than the Y max. So if I get a window range error, what I need to do is check to make sure that my mins are actually smaller than my maxes. So I don't know what values to pick for this. I'm just going to change it to be -4, because now clearly the Y min is smaller than the Y max. So it seems like that probably did it. Let's try hitting graph again. Oh no, I have another error. It says invalid dimension. It says check 1 is less than the dimension of list, which is less than 999. It says to set plots off, second plot plots off. Oh, what it's saying is I must be trying to plot some data in my calculator, but my calculator doesn't have any data to plot. So if I press the Y equals button, I have to quit that. Go to the Y equals button. Notice up here where it says plot 1, that's highlighted. I don't want that highlighted. I need to turn that off, because that's what's asking the calculator to plot data. So if I go and just demonstrate what it's trying to plot, if I press the stat button and I press the edit command, this is like lists of we can type data into, and we can plot like a set of x's with a set of y's and make points on our table. But I don't have anything in here to plot, and the calculator is getting mad at me because it's saying, hey, you're asking me to plot something, and there's nothing to plot. So I'm going to move up to plot 1, where it's highlighted, and press enter, and that's going to unhighlight it. So if you get that dimension error when graphing, you'll need to make sure your plots are off. Okay, I'm going to press graph again. I got a third error. This one says syntax. And it says then check all arguments entered. So let's hit the, here now we have a new option. We have this go to command. So let's hit the go to. And it's taken me right to this symbol here. So if I go back and I look, what did I mean to type? I meant to type -2 sine x. But if I go back and look at my history, when I did this, I pressed the subtraction button. Oh no! I meant to press the negative button, because in the calculator, subtraction and the negative are two different buttons. They have two different commands. They work in their program to work differently. They're not interchangeable. So if I get a syntax error, I want to make sure to go back and see that, like, the operators, the addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, are written in a way that makes sense, that I haven't used subtraction when I meant negative. I don't have, like, plus and then a times sign after it, things of that nature. So I fixed that. Now let's hit graph. And finally, I have everything. No more errors. But I got a picture that I wasn't very satisfied with. This doesn't seem very helpful. I did something wrong. Well, no. Nothing is wrong. We haven't typed anything in incorrectly. The calculator just isn't giving us a picture that we're really looking for. But if we know how to ask the calculator nicely, it'll give us a nice looking picture. So one easy way to get a decent picture is to press the zoom button. And then if I read all these options, Z-box, zoom in, zoom out, Z decimal, Z squared, Z standard, Z trig, Z integer, zoom stat, etc. Notice one of them is trig. What class are we in right now? Trigonometry. That might be a good option there. So let's pick zoom trig and see what that does. And oh, I've got a graph now that looks like it makes a heck of a lot of sense. So what zoom trig did is it moved our window. So remember, our old window was from -1 to +1. Our new window now is -8.6 yada 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 to +8.6 yada yada yada. Do you recognize this number, 8.6 yada yada yada? Turns out that that's 4 pi as a decimal. And it's changed the x scale now to this weird number. Do you recognize this number? It's pi over 2. And what the x scale does is it's basically where these tick marks are appearing. So these tick marks on the graph's x-axis are appearing every pi over 2 units. Oh, splendid. So that's a picture, and it's actually probably more of the picture than we needed for our graphing assignment. Typically, we'd ask you to graph from -2 pi to +2 pi. So I could go and I could change this by doing -2 pi to +2 pi. And again, I just went into the window to change that, because maybe the directions on my graphing assignment ask to graph from -2 pi to +2 pi. That's a fairly standard request. And I can just alter my calculator screen just to make sure that the picture that I'm drawing on my sheet of paper matches the picture that the calculator is producing, just to check my work. And everything there looks splendid. Now, what I want to do is I want to check to make sure that the points that I generated are actually the same values. So I want to check to make sure these points are actually points on this blue graph. Because the calculator probably isn't making a mistake in doing the calculations, but I just added and subtracted a bunch of fractions there. Maybe I made a mistake. It's possible. Not likely, but it's possible. So what I can do is if I press second and the graph button, this is going to open up the table. And the table here is going to be a list of y values on our graph with their corresponding, a list of x values on our graph with their corresponding y value. So if I look at my set of points, the first point I'd like to see is pi over 4. And then the next point I'd like to see is 3 pi over 4. I'm going up by, looks like, 2 pi over 4. So that's what I want to get to set up my table to do, so I can see if those points are actually the right ones. So I'm going to press second, and then go to press the window button. That's going to open up the table set menu, because what we're doing is going to set up the table. We said that we wanted it to start at pi over 4. So I'll type that in, and I'll press enter. And we said we want it to go by 2 pi over 4. And I press enter. And you notice that this is automatically converting these to decimals. Now I'm going to go back and look at my table. And if I look at my table, I'll notice that pi over 4 was this decimal. The y-coordinate is 1, matches exactly. 3 pi over 4, I hope it's this decimal. I could check it on my calculator and make sure it is. It is. And that's -1, etc. With 5 pi over 4 and +1, etc., etc., etc. So this all looks very nice. Well, that's really good. And that's basically how I can use my graphing calculator to check my work, to make sure that the graph that I've done is, or drawn is the correct graph, and the points that I've generated are the correct